Alright, how's everybody doing? I apologize if you can hear the noise in the background. Hopefully, Maria can get rid of most of it by sound mixing when she edits the video. Hopefully a lot of you are out voting or have already voted today, and we're going to bring you some coverage of election results as soon as they start to come in. But I need to buck up and I need to make this video. And I'm going to be honest with you and straightforward right up front. One of my biggest concerns when I sat down to make this video is that I have likely a more right-leaning audience. I try to keep my coverage balanced and neutral, but based on the videos that I see recommending to my videos and things like that, you can see that stuff in your analytics on YouTube. It's pretty easy to hypothesize that my audience is somewhat right-leaning. Now, I don't think that anybody who's super right-leaning would probably subscribe to me, because just like nobody who's super left-leaning would probably subscribe to me, because people who are like way extreme in their viewpoints tend to only want to hear people who agree with them. Because I'm right-leaning. I'm a Republican. I just voted 90% Republican on my ballot. But whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning or whatever, I hope that you care about the truth and the facts. And at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that everything I'm about to tell you is objective fact. And so if it upsets you because it doesn't suit your narrative or your beliefs, I've realized that that's something that you need to come to terms with yourself. So today I want to talk about the reality of Central American crime, and specifically its relationship to America. And I want to target something that Donald Trump said in his recent address on immigration, because I think it gets to the heart of where the common thoughts or beliefs on this issue are objectively false. Now, here's the thing. There is a huge problem with crime in Central America. Specifically, it tends to center around drug cartels and other criminal organizations like that. For the point or the purpose of this video, we're going to be focusing on some of the most well-known and some of the most powerful of these groups. Those being first, the one that Donald Trump mentioned by name in his address, MS-13, also known as Mara Salvatrucha, Mara Trece, Mara 13, and their rival gang, Mara 18 or Cale 18, Barrio 18, as well as MS-13's kind of overarching alliance, which is known as the Sureños, and the drug cartel that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, that being the Sineloa Cartel, famously run by El Chapo. And another group that I might reference kind of in passing is Los Zetas, which is another drug cartel that's powerful in Mexico and is a rival to the Sinaloa Cartel. Now, the politics and the different alliances and rivalries and things in the Latin criminal landscape are so confusing. They're so convoluted. There are gangs that are allies but only in prison, and they're enemies on the street. There are gangs that are at war in America, but they're allied in Mexico and Central America. It's very confusing. It's very complex, right? So I'm not going to be diving into every little aspect of that. I only need to explain to you how this relates to the United States of America, because I want to dispel a myth for you. Donald Trump said, and I've heard 1,000 times from other people, that we need to prevent these criminal organizations, and specifically Donald Trump said MS-13, from entering the United States of America. Now, why is this a ridiculous notion? Off the top of your head, can you tell me? If you answered that MS-13 is an American gang, you're absolutely correct. Both MS-13 and Mara 18, who are responsible for the bloodbath that is Honduras right now, and specifically the city of San Pedro Sula, where children are wantonly murdered in the street every day, where they have the second highest homicide rate per capita of any city in the world, where more than 95% of homicides never even lead to an arrest, and where as many as 90% of witnesses are killed, where the police can't do anything to protect them. These two gangs, Mara 18 and MS-13, they're at the core responsible. Now, MS-13 was founded by a man named Ernesto Miranda, and he is a completely separate individual from the Ernesto Miranda for whom the Miranda warnings are named. Different guy, coincidentally, same exact name. But it was founded right here in the United States of America in 1980. The backstory is pretty similar, in my opinion, to the foundation of the Italian or Irish mafia, or, plenty of other racially divided criminal organizations who kind of formed up out of a need because they were ostracized from the rest of the larger community and needed to find protection and opportunity from within. The birth of Mara 18 was a little bit different than that. The 18th Street gang that is Mara 18 today split off from a gang called Clanton 14, and it seems that the dividing incident was that the 18th Street group wanted to start inviting immigrant members into the gang, and the 14th Street group said that they were not allowed to, and as a result of this, the 18th Street group split off and became mortal enemies of the 14th Street group and started to allow immigrants into the gang, which kind of brings me to my next point. In the original cut of this video, which was gonna be a lot longer, went in and I talked to a lot of people, I watched a lot of documentaries, I did a lot of reading, and one of the things that I was trying to ascertain was what the actual ethnic makeup of these gangs are. Are they actually just 100% Latin American Hispanic gangs? I find that there's a bit of a different answer depending on which one of these two groups we look at. In the case of MS-13, while I was able to find some anecdotal suggestions that the answer is no, it does seem to me to be, at the very least, like 99% Latin American. In the case of Mara 18, it's not that way. At least the American side of it is still majority Hispanic, but I would say it's more like 75 or 80%, with the other 20 to 25% being made up of white and black members. Now, as these groups spread into Central America, they became part of the larger criminal organization picture going on down there as the drug cartels started to spread and gain influence. MS-13 aligned themselves with the Mexican Mafia and with a larger prison group called the Sureños, as well as allying with the Los Zetas drug cartel. Mara 18 went in a bit of a different direction and ended up kind of being the blood enemies of MS-13, especially on the streets of Honduras. And that led to the bloodbath that I mentioned earlier on the streets of San Pedro Sula. Now, again, this is where the politics kind of come into play, but MS-13 being allied with Los Zetas also puts them at odds with the Sineloa Cartel and El Chapo. So they are part of that war between Los Zetas and the Sineloa Cartel in Mexico, while fighting Mara 18 in Honduras. Now, speaking of the Sineloa Cartel, we hear all the time about cartels like the Sineloa Cartel and the Medellin Cartel in Colombia, and we all know about the drug trafficking and things into the United States they are well known for. Now, there are arguments to be made that that could be put on the laps of the United States because it is American money, one way or another, that funds them. It is American purchase of products. It is the demand that we have that incites the supply. But what if I told you that the supply was America's fault as well? See, one of the Sineloa Cartel's most profitable products, as it were, over the last few years especially, has been the import of heroin. And heroin, for those of you who don't know, is a derivative of opium poppies. And opium is grown in Mexico and then processed and shipped into the United States of America. But wait a second. Any of you who might be a botanist, you might be wondering to yourself, well, opium is native to the Middle East and Spain and France and not the New World. Why is it growing in such quantities in Mexico? Well, if you answered the American government put it there, you would be absolutely correct. During World War II, it became hard to get a readily available supply of opium to provide morphine to soldiers on the front line because of the current geopolitical climate, because of the conflict in the Far East and the conflict in Europe. There just wasn't an easy way to get it here in large quantities. So the United States provided Mexican farmers with opium, and they gave them large financial incentives to switch their crop over, and then proceeded to purchase those crops to help supply the medics on the front line with morphine. But then the war ended, and all of a sudden you have these farmers in Mexico who have switched over all of their harvesting to opium instead of more financially viable crops outside of wartime due to the amount of money that the United States was paying them. Only the United States wasn't so eager to help them support switching their crops back over or to continue paying them for their opium crops when they could now get much cheaper and larger supplies from elsewhere in the world where opium grows in much larger quantities. So these farmers were left, literally in this case, holding the bag. And the only thing that they had to do with it was to start finding other people to sell it to. Now, when the drug cartels started to come into power and started to rise, all of a sudden they had a new buyer with the amount of money available to them to actually sustain them, and of course they're going to sell it to them. So we have a situation when it comes to these drug cartels, at least in the case of the heroin trade, where both the supply and the demand originate here in America. So what's my point here? What am I getting at by telling you that the Central American and South American drug cartels are funded by and have supplies that come from America? What am I getting at by explaining to you that the deadliest of Central American criminal organizations like MS-13 are American street gangs originating and having tremendous membership here in America? What is my point? Well, my point is this. We can argue sovereignty and the need to uphold borders and laws and things like that. But when your argument is founded on the fact that Central America is inherently criminal, that the Latin people are inherently criminal, that we need to defend the United States from a criminal influence that originates in Central and South America and has the potential to spread north, off the bat, I know one thing for sure, and that's that you haven't done your homework. The fact of the matter is that if we look at the facts, if we trace back the history and things like that, we can see that no matter which direction we go in, the criminal influence originates here and spreads south. The power, the seat of power for this crime is here. The fundamental difference, the reason that we can maintain law and order, is because we have a much more powerful and stable police and military presence that can't be readily overrun by criminal organizations. But if you're going to tell me how violent MS-13 is and that we need to keep them out of America, I'm simply going to laugh at you. Because that very statement tells me that you don't know what MS-13 is. And if you're going to tell me that the drug trade is the result of the actions of Central America, or the failures of Central America, or a failure in morality of its people, again, I'm going to laugh at you. Because in fact, that drug trade is the result of an American demand coupled with America using Central and South America as a dumping grounds for its problems for decades. This isn't really a statement on immigration, to be honest with you. If anything, I don't think that immigration is necessarily the most effective way to deal with the problem. If anything, if it were up to me, what I would like to see is the kind of intervention and legitimate effort to stabilize Central America by the United States that we see in random countries overseas. I would like to see the American government make an effort to have the U.S. military training Honduran soldiers and supplying and arming Honduran soldiers the way that we do soldiers in the Middle East, so that they can help eradicate the crime problem that is the result of these places being essentially America's dumping ground, where we throw our problems and then hope we can put up a wall and forget all about them. The problem isn't that we need to control a border because there are so many people trying to get from Central America to the United States. The problem is that there are so many people that want to leave Central America and enter the United States. And we need to get to the root of why that problem exists, and we need to deal with it. We need to fix our problems. If it were up to me, that's what I would see happen. Anyway, guys, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video, which should probably be at least preliminary election results. Peace.